This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
Is 10:08 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast, and you're on Ask Your Rabbi.
This is Rabbi Shafir Loeb of Congregation Eitz Chayam, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast. And bear with me, folks, because we are having some technical challenges on the Facebook side, but we hope to get them resolved quickly. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Was another little issue.
Yeah, we must have had two pots down there on cue. So yeah, it makes a difference.
It does. I love technology when it works. Right, and that's the. So we're waiting on a password here, and then folks on Facebook should be able to join us. So
there's nobody on Facebook anyway. So
I understand. And sometimes that might even be true.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
So they can listen on TuneIn app?
Right. They can go to a couple of different ways. They can join us on Alexa or Google Home. Mm-hmm. All those different ways. I love that we're all so interconnected. I'm just getting a little annoyed at the cell phone here, so we'll see. Somebody went off in search of things,
So you are having some cell phone problems too?
Carol
couldn't read her New York Times this morning from the house.
It seems like some different things. There's probably some upgrade. There's a hair somewhere in here too. Okay, there we go. So the when different systems do upgrade, I mean, I understand it. It's just frustrating when different systems do upgrades. Then not everybody talks to each other.
That's right.
So hold on a second here. W, yeah, well, we'll have to get that and interrupt it and all of this other stuff. Okay, yeah, I know you're unable, so come on.
Do you want me to run a pre-recorded commercial here?
No, that's okay. So, it's a beautiful Friday, as it often is, and we're waiting on the computer to do its thing. And I don't know. Anyway, I will not worry about that until it gives me a face that I can deal with over here. I'll drink my coffee. Because it's not letting me do anything. I love technology. Frustration. Anyway, we'll have to get this. I'll have to mark it down myself somewhere. It's trying. There we go. Okay, yeah, I know that you couldn't do that. It's locked in and I'm trying. Do you ever have a Friday like that where you just feel like no matter what you try, it's not going anywhere?
I think every day is that way for me.
That actually is one of the things that I was going to talk about. An interesting piece. Sometimes you feel like the world is fuzzy and you can't quite pull something out, and it's kind of what we call that tip of the tongue kind of phenomena where you almost have it but not quite.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes, here's one of the things to consider, which is that it might well be blood sugar.
Oh!
If your blood sugar is high or low, it can truly mess up how and what you're doing.
Oh, welcome to our newest medical show. Oh.
I hear you.
Wow. I never even thought of that.
Well, I think a lot of people don't. And so one of the things that I'm going to suggest for folks is to, here I go, I'm going to try to do this.
She's playing with a tablet right now.
Yep, she is. And hopefully this will like it, and we'll see.
We have a book with 4,000 pages of passwords.
Yeah, and it tells me this one's incorrect.
Not a surprise. Not a surprise.
Now it's trying it. Okay. Yeah, never know. So, yeah, blood sugar is really an interesting thing, and there haven't been enough studies yet, and actually I'm talking with somebody and trying to get a study started so that we can document it. But there's been what is called anecdotal evidence, and what that means is that people have tried it, but it hasn't been scientifically tested yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that is...
I get that.
And, oh boy, we're going to go here. Here we go. We're almost there. And so, I think that that's what's happening with my computer.
What? Its blood sugar's
its blood
too low?
sugar's not right. Yeah. Here we go.
Have you been feeding it sweets again?
I'm giving it a drink of my coffee in a minute here.
When I was in Santa Barbara, this goes back to when the dinosaurs were on the planet. And
I remember those days.
I was a news guy, and they had an elevated newsroom, so I would look down into the master control for the morning show. And all of a sudden, we were going in past the 8 o'clock news, and I was about ready to do local news. And I looked, and you could not see anything in that room.
Wow.
And our morning guy had dumped some Coca-Cola in the board, and it caught fire. Oh, my God. And I had to walk into the fire extinguisher. Oh, our engineer was furious. Needless to say, the equipment was ruined, and and there was smoke damage to the rest of the stuff that was in that room. Oh, boy. Yeah. That's a bad day.
Yeah,
That is
I agree. I agree. Well, I'm going to close the book for... Yeah. So getting back to the original, Coke can do amazing things to all kinds of things.
Wasn't there, like, years ago, probably when you were at Goodyear, I sort of remember a television story, and it may have been a show, where a guy put a nail into a Coke bottle, and it dissolved.
Well, it does. It's carbonic acid.
Yeah, but a nail. Steel. It was like, oh, my goodness.
Certain metals it also can destroy your engine,
Yeah, I'll bet.
It's got sugar and it's got acid, and it sets up some chemical reactions, but that doesn't mean it's going to do that to your stomach. Right? That's a fallacy. So that's where the scientific evidence needs to be in something. You need to understand the science underneath it. There are so many things that people say that the engineer in me it's like fingernails going down a chalkboard.
Yeah, I'll bet.
And,
well, that's because your mind is so analytical.
Yeah, it is, but, and there I go with my knows. Some examples of some of the crazy things that people say. Cold energy comes into the room. It doesn't. No, that's not what's happening. What's happening is that the heat is being drawn out. We go from hot to cold, high energy to low, always. And what feels cold to us is our body's nerve system, our senses,
okay,
detecting the environment or the substance we're touching, drawing out the heat from our body. And we call that cold.
Okay.
Interesting. And it taxes the body, so we don't like it as a rule, unless we're overheated, in which case the body goes, thank God. Right? She finally touched something cool. But it's a relative thing. But energy goes from the high to the low. It's what causes the winds that are connected. So here's the hurricane piece. The hurricane is a very deep low, and that creates the winds. And it's not unlike the spiral in your tub when you drain the water, or the spiral that flushes your toilet. Those are all the same phenomena. Creates a low energy. So when you open the flap at the back of the toilet, it creates a low pressure that sucks the water out. And it goes out in a spiral, which has force, and so it grabs everything, or tries to grab everything.
It almost sounds like a tornado type.
Well, it is. It's a little tornado in your, there was that commercial, tornado in your bowl.
Okay.
Many years ago, there was that commercial. But the idea is...
I don't remember. I wasn't that old. I mean...
I know. I'm 903, and you're only 900. I got it.
You're a spring chicken compared to me.
Sometimes the spring is gone. Never mind.
Winter has arrived.
It had, but so has spring.
Oh.
And I am always amazed. The spring piece that is to me amazing is how the plants revive themselves. I have a pomegranate that somebody gave me at the end of last year, fall, and I planted it in a nice big pot in my front yard because we don't own a home yet, and I don't know where we're going to buy, but I'd like to have that pomegranate in it, so it's living in a pot right now.
Sure.
And, of course, its first reaction to being uprooted and put in a pot was to go, leaves gone. So it looked like this bare stick, and it's been doing that all winter. And I've been looking at it thinking, oh, you're dead. And I'll pitch you, in spring when I get around to doing things. And it has sat there, and in the interim, it has put out these beautiful little leaves all over itself.
Nice, yeah.
And it's clearly not dead. So I need to give it some more water.
Yeah, we got a bougainvillea outside.
Bougainvillea. Come on, you know better.
That is starting to get its leaves back, and we were worried about that. I mean, we were really worried about that, and it's fine.
Yeah, well, they can handle freeze. They live in Tucson.
Yeah.
And they live in Peru. Oh, there's some gorgeous bougainvillea gardens in Peru. And one of the funny stories about that is that someone was with me and saw we went to the beautiful gardens. Because they surround a museum that looks at all of the ancient cultures that have been in Peru.
Cool.
It's a really nice museum. And on the way into the building are all these beautiful cascades of bougainvillea and arches of them. And she was like, oh, these flowers are so gorgeous. And I'm like, they were in the backyard in Tucson. I planted at least 7 different colors of them.
Yeah.
And I have one in my backyard now.
Cool.
I'm hoping to get some more, but again, we're hoping to buy here soon.
Yeah, good.
I was hoping to buy before the housing market went crazy, but now I'm waiting for it to come down at least a little bit.
And the interest rates to come down a little bit, too.
Yeah, all of that.
Yeah.
So that I can afford a house. We'll get there. But when we are, I will do things like a bougainvillea garden. Let them cascade.
That would be cool. That would be cool, yeah.
They can die if it gets too cold, but colder than what we get in Port St. Lucie.
Well, I thought of you when my former desk mate at KVOA sent us video of a snowfall in Tucson this week.
Oh.
And we both have been there and seen the snow, and it's unusual, but it happens.
It does happen.
Yeah.
I love the pictures of Saguaro with snow on their heads.
Oh, yes.
Or when it cascades in and around a prickly pear, especially the Santa Rita's, because they're just so pretty. The Santa Rita prickly pear fruit. It's so pretty. The purplish.
That's the one that blooms at night, right?
No, that's the Queen of the Night.
I've never seen one of them.
Oh, it is. If you are ever back in Tucson, it's usually right around July 4th.
Okay.
The Tohono Chul has the largest collection of Queen of the Night.
Oh, okay.
It's a kind of epiphylium, and there's another kind that folks here are calling Queen of the Night, but it's not the registered Queen of the Night. That looks like basically a dead pencil most of the year, and then all of a sudden it just kind of like greens up and puts out this flower that's absolutely spectacular and gorgeous and almost luminesces into the night. It's to attract the pollinators for it, because it only blooms one night. The flowers last only that first night.
Wow.
And they start opening late at night around 11. Actually, here in Port St. Lucie, they don't start opening until about 12 or 1. They're just barely opening. They're a little later. I don't know why.
They're on mountain time?
They're on something time. And in the morning, as the sun comes up, it burns the flower and it shuts and it's closed. And if it was pollinated, it'll form a seed pod. And it's amazing how many moths and other critters come out. They're attracted to the scent. It's apparently as heady to them as it is to me. It's a gorgeous scent. And so Tohono Chul actually has people who are very skilled. They have some docents that get together and they figure out which night they're going to bloom. And they've been they were not successful this past year. They missed it. But most years they catch it and they open up the park and they open up the gift shops and the restaurants, and the park comes alive at 11 o'clock at night waiting for these flowers to open. And then you walk around and each plant has a name, and Kathy or whatever, different plants. And they'll catalog the photos each year from each plant. It's really quite spectacular. And you can buy some of the babies.
Wow, that's cool.
And I have one of those babies on my lanai. I don't remember which one it's from, but that's my one queen of the night. And I have some of the other epiphyliums that are around, and some beautiful ones. And they're all attractive. I've got night blooming cirrus too, that also only blooms for one night. And there are a number of those in and around Port St. Lucie. Those are the tall, barrely kind of cactus. They're maybe 4 to 6 inches in diameter. Mm-hmm. And they'll grow up looking something like a pipe cactus, an organ pipe cactus, because they put out arms and things like that. I've got one of those. Actually, I've got 2 of those rescued in my front yard, also in pots.
I think there was a whole section of those in the Saguaro National Monument.
There are.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some incredibly beautiful cactus and succulent species, and of course Tohono Chul, I want to say the botanical gardens. Thank you. In Tucson, both of those have some beautiful specimens of it. I particularly like Tohono Chul. I just like walking in their gardens.
Yeah, that was after our time, so we'll.
Oh my gosh, you'll have to go back and see.
Tohono
Chul is where I used to live at the edge of the flatlands. If you head toward Oro, you'll come across Tohono Chul.
Okay, yeah.
It's not hard. It's not far. It's before you get to the Tucson Mall. So, yeah.
Nice. Yep, it's on the to-do list.
It's well worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still a member there, and they have these member sales, and I can't go because they won't ship that cactus to Florida.
Ooh, is that one of the banned substances coming into the state? It's
not coming into the state that's the problem. It's that Arizona doesn't want to let go of any saguaro.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's protected. Yeah.
And
yeah.
You have to. You can get some, but you have to figure out how to do it. You have to get a baby from a non-registered plant. There are some. That's the key. So if the baby's not registered, then its babies won't be registered either. But of course, it takes a while.
So it would be an alien.
Yeah, or you can grow them from seeds, which is actually how the nurseries do it. But it takes a few years until you've got this small plant that you can do anything with. But nurseries are patient.
There you go.
It has to be you have to be patient in a nursery, because some of the plants. I'm watching. I've got what's called a pink princess, that I have in my collection, and it's had this stump on it that it's trying to grow a leaf, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, I will be very old before you are mature plant.
Now, this is also cacti?
No, that's a philodendron.
Okay.
Philodendron have beautiful, and means tree lovers, so they're climbers, they're vines. And we have, of course, and they're related to the pothos. They're not the same species, but they're related to pothos. They're all in the family of aroids. Aroids are the plants that put out air roots. And you'll see some of them using the air roots to actually stabilize the plant, or they'll use them to hook into a tree, not because they're draining nutrients out of the tree, but because they're asking the tree to hold it. And it will climb up the tree. And that's how they got their name, philodendron, philo-loving dendron tree, a tree lover.
Wow. Okay.
And it was an interesting thing. I was sitting in somebody's backyard with them a few months back, and all of their aroids were taking straight shots at all of the different trees. And you might say, how can they do that? How do they know where the trees are? But it's where the shade is that hits them. So if they grow into the shade, they're growing toward the tree.
Sure.
It just works.
Wow. Nature.
Nature is interesting.
Nature is amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
You don't have to be taught that it's cooler in the shade. You figure that out when you live in Port St. Lucie or in Tucson. Some of my favorite pictures in Tucson are seeing a telephone pole and 7 or 8 birds lined up in the 2 inches of shade.
Yeah.
Because it matters. Getting out of the sun. That's how I describe Tucson to people. It's not that it really feels that much hotter. It's that the sun is unrelenting. It never is covered. It never goes away except at night.
And it is the first blast of summer for me, coming from Santa Barbara, was like walking into an oven.
Yeah.
It's dry.
It's very
really
dry. It's walking into a bake oven. And Florida feels so wet compared to that. And for the most part, the extra humidity is nice, although it gets muggy on occasion. What I really don't like about the extra humidity is my hair.
I was going to say.
My hair was so much easier and better in Tucson. And what I liked about that the most was I could take the shower, and by the time I left the house, my hair was dry.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
Here in Port St. Lucie, I can get where I'm going, and an hour later, it might be thinking about drying out.
Well, or it's soaking wet,
Yeah.
depending on how humid it is.
That would be true.
Sure. Yeah.
So, yeah, right now I'm enjoying taking walks. One of the things that I do for breaks, and I actually kick my students out of the classroom to go do it, is take a walk. Take a walk, and right now it's wonderful to take a walk out and around the Kaiser parking lot. The Kaiser classes have breaks because they go for 4 hours, so you can't sit for 4 hours and be productive. You need to get up and move the blood around the body. So I say, go walk. Come back after you've made a circuit, and I'll walk with you. And I do that. I go out and I walk, and it's so beautiful right now. And, of course, the heat of summer, those walks will be inside the building. And there's a group that does that do laps in the building.
Okay. Yeah, well, that works. That's a good-sized building, so you could do that.
Yeah. 10 laps is a mile.
See, now, if you did that around the Pruitt campus of IRSC, I mean, that's beautiful.
It is gorgeous there, and I have gone for walks there.
Yeah.
I have about 15 minutes between 2 of my classes there, and I have been known to go for quick walks.
Yeah. Well, when you get past the Schreiber Center now, you're going to have, according to what Dr. Moore was saying, a whole bunch of new dorms for
nursing students?
Nursing and medical.
But the nursing students were all over the place on Wednesday, and it was interesting. I noticed the bevy of them.
Oh, the blues.
The blue and white, which is the same as what Kaiser has for the nursing students. And so there's this cluster of them that were in and around the building. I'm guessing they had a meeting or a class inside the building and hadn't yet gotten into their room.
I saw some pictures that were on LinkedIn, and it looked to me like a lot of the students might be second career type individuals.
I think that people are doing that. We're seeing a shift. We have many who go back. I'm going back to school. I'm chronically a student.
You're a perennial student. Yeah,
I am. I'm addicted to learning, but I know that I'm not alone. I look at my classmates, and there are about, I want to say 10 or 15 in the class that I'm taking now. And most of them are second or third careers because we're living longer. Realizing that in the last 100 years, the life expectancy has almost doubled.
Yeah. Oh, it
and
has, yeah.
So it's reasonable for people to do more than one career in their lifetimes. Among other things, there are many new and different careers. And even if somebody, say, was a nurse back 40 years ago, if they want to stay working, which some 60-year-olds do, not all, but so let's say 20 years. You've been a nurse for 20 years even. The requirements to have the upper level jobs has changed dramatically.
Mm-hmm. You bet.
Right. Nurses now, and I would predict that into the future, they're going to need that bachelor's to even get the entry-level jobs coming down the road.
I would not be surprised if it's masters.
Well, to get the senior jobs, probably masters.
Yeah.
Florida certainly does most of its licensure at a master's level, and that's true for a lot of career fields. It's one of the reasons I'm going back, is licensure is at the master's level, not at the doctorate level, but at the master's level.
And, of course, you have 2 doctorates.
Yeah.
It makes no sense at all.
And I finally did get the university where I'm studying now to accept that my doctoral statistics was satisfactory for undergrad stats.
Well, come on.
That
is absurd.
That took 3 or 4 phone calls and an email to get handled. And finally I got to somebody who said, well, of course that makes sense. Give me a minute. And he went and talked to the registrars and said, well, be real here, folks. Because they kept saying, oh, it's a different level. Yeah, but it's higher than what you require. It's not that it's lower. It's not that it's left or right. It's...
Could the registrars spell PhD?
It's a box-checking mentality.
Yeah, it is.
And it scares me, not because of the bots and the AI, but because we are stopping to think. And I'll say this, in Judaism we say B'Shem Amra or B'Shem Amro, in the name of the one who said it. And I remember standing in front of the dean of the rabbinical school and talking about the things in my application status. It was right in the very, very beginning when I had to have this interview to be accepted into the program. And I commented that some of the things in my past were a little probably unusual compared to what most applicants might have, to which she responded, Rabbi Marcia Prager, that it's important to recognize that you have to deal with the individual. Policies are for people who don't think.
Wow.
Yeah. and so it gets to that. And I had that with a couple of different places that I talked to about going for this licensure training. And one of them required that actually all of them required that I had to get the transcript from the bachelor's, because a master's or a doctorate wasn't good enough. You have to have a bachelor's to get into the program. Box checking.
Wow.
So back when the dinosaurs roamed and I got my BA.
They had those back then? Oh.
They definitely had the dinosaurs. Some of them were teaching classes.
My.
Of course, you had penguins, so.
Yeah, I did. I had tons of penguins. Yep.
We might as well play with all the games, right? And every once in a while, I think there was a student of mine who came up after class one time and said, I'm trying to read this book by Kant. And I said, good luck, because I remember trying to read it in German when I was in undergrad, because I had to have a language requirement, and I didn't want to start out at square one in any new language. And I said, well, let's do German. And they said, we don't have a course high enough for you, because I spoke German, thanks to my mother. And so they actually created an independent study with me, and the professor said, let's do Kant. And I'm like, he's not easy in English. He's definitely not going to be easy in German, and he wasn't.
Wow. Oh,
Some of his words were a line long, because in German you put all of the adjectives together in one word. So you have to separate out the pieces of the word. You have to parse it.
Wow. Now, did your mother speak German at home?
Yeah, she spoke German. When she and I were alone, we would speak German. And when my father and I were alone, we would speak Hebrew. And when the family was together or outside, we'd speak English.
See, my mom would never speak Italian at home.
And it was an attitude among many immigrants that they wanted their kids to sound and be native, because you were a natural born American. I was born in America.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents didn't want me to have an accent. I mean, everybody has an accent. I have what they call the Midwest accent. I don't have the Brooklyn accent from where I was born, but I do have the Midwest where I'd lived so long.
Well, you lived in the Midwest for a long time.
A long time, right.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of California in there from my California days. And
so funny, when Carol went to work at Channel 4 in Boston, and it was so funny. It was somebody there, one of the old crusty Bostonians was talking about that she had a Southern accent, and I'm saying, what?
She had a California accent.
just came from San Diego, for God's sake.
I know a Southern accent. I can do Southern. I lived in South Carolina for 1 year, and I had a professor. I went to the University of South Carolina for 1 year.
Did you?
I did.
Columbia, right?
Yeah, in Columbia, South Carolina.
Yeah.
My father did an interim stint there as a rabbi. And so I went, it was my first year of college, and they weren't going to let me go away from home. So I got to go to South Carolina and start at University of South Carolina, Gamecocks. Yay. And I had this one professor who taught about the Pythagorean theorem. And it was
the who?
The Pythagorean theorem. And he was the hardest person for me to learn to understand.
Oh.
It took me a while.
So, did you ask, can we get English subtitles?
No, and his accent definitely distracted me from being attentive as I should have and needed to have been. So I got to,
That's great.
It was not one of my better years, but anyway.
The longest year of your life.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that, but in any event, it was an interesting year. And then I transferred to Ursinus, where I graduated. Which was in Pennsylvania. Then I was old enough to pick my college and go away from home.
Mm-hmm. Good school.
Yeah, it is a good school, and they've changed dramatically. I look at them now, but that's where I got my radio station experience to start, my newspaper chops, and the VCR crew, which really dates me. I was
in your old Volvo.
In my old Volvo. My Volvo was allowed on campus because it could carry the VCR equipment in its trunk.
There you go.
And I was not about to turn down that gig because I wanted the parking. Because I could park next to the dorm instead of in the back where all the students had to leave their cars and not have them on campus. I could have them on campus. I could drive anywhere. I had to go for the radio station to do things. I had to take the newspaper to the next town. I did a lot of things with my car in my student life. So it was reasonable that I had that privilege, but I wanted it.
Isn't it amazing when you think back to those times that your student newspaper had to be printed off campus?
Yeah, I had to. Well, and it was printed on newsprint. It was a small.
Oh yeah.
It was a small newsprint paper. One of the smaller, not the big tabloid, but the tabloid size.
Right, the tabloid, yeah.
And it was, I want to say, 8 pages. So it was 8 to 12 pages We had to do the 4x4 layout.
This is a weekly?
It was a weekly.
Wow.
So we had
You guys
a lot.
are busy.
We had, I had a staff of reporters. They were all volunteer students. But we had an article from each of the major departments, what was going on in the department. We had, I did interviews with different professors and printed the interview Playboy style. And for those who don't know what that means you literally print the interview. You don't edit it. You edit it for English, but it's people are just reading the question and answers. So I would do that with a different professor every week. I worked my tail off for that newspaper. It's interesting that I never really went into journalism after
you
all
burned
that.
out.
I enjoyed it, and we ran classified ads, and we had other ads, and I had to lay out the ads, and I knew how to do all those things.
Wow. By the way, this show has been on for a lot of years, and that was the first reference of Playboy on Ask a Rabbi.
It's a style of interview, folks.
I know.
And some of the interviews were really good in Playboy, I have to admit.
Yeah.
It's and you can Google those and find
That's why I
them.
tried to convince my mother of that.
Yeah, right, because you were just looking at the interviews. Got it. I have a much better chance of succeeding at that argument than you did.
Oh, my.
That and yeah. It was a style of interview anyway. And so I patterned it. I don't know that I patterned it after it, probably. But
I know the fella that I worked with at ESPN, Ray Firestone, his interview shows were, much
that style.
like that.
Yeah, it was a certain style, and it was recognized as that. And I think the students really enjoyed it. I wish that campus newspapers did that sort of thing now. I think that
Do they even exist now?
They do to some small extent. And I think they struggle, in part, there's a fear that maybe the students don't use them. One of the things that I would like to see both Kaiser and IRSC do is a more student-run, like a Facebook page or an Instagram, but it needs to be student-run, because when it's run from top down, then it's very different. And it wasn't that the administration didn't have an input. I'll put it that way. They didn't have veto control, because I didn't run the paper past them before it went to press. I heard about it after the fact if they didn't like something.
Oh, yeah.
There was one editorial, that this is a famous piece for me. The dining room was a concession. Somebody had that concession from the school, and they served dinner, and they were paid by the college to feed us. And they had taken it upon themselves to give out a copy of Good News for Modern Man, which is a modern version of the New Testament of Christian scriptures.
Ooh.
And they put it on the tables and gave it to everybody as they were going in. And I, of course, took one because they were giving it out to everybody, and read it. And I wrote an editorial saying that I didn't think that was an appropriate use of college funds, because since they were being paid by the college.
Right. You got a call from the A building, I take it?
I did. I was told that I intimidated the manager of the cafeteria. And I said, well, then perhaps he needs to, and I was brash enough to say, then perhaps he needs to think about his decisions, which did not sit well. It's a good thing I didn't have another year to go. It was my senior year. But so I got to hear the backlash on that. But for the most part, they let me do whatever I wanted.
Now, your radio station at the college, was that student run?
It was also student
Ours
run.
was at Loyola.
Student licensed and student run.
Yeah.
Our FCC licensee was a Mr. Jeff Karpinski. And we used his license. We actually used it for 2 years after he graduated, until the next person got a license. That was back in the days when you had to learn.
Yeah.
You had to learn code and all that other stuff to get your license.
Yeah, Morse code.
Yeah.
I had Morse code in my in my first class test. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was something that we misused in class. We would send notes to each other.
SOS.
Yeah, frequently. The other popular one was idiot, but
oh,
yeah,
that's a lost art. I mean, you just think of so many things that have just gone away.
Well, there is really not a lot of need for Morse code anymore, although it plays wonderfully for Hollywood for people to use it as some secret code. And there are still people who can really hear it and read it and transcribe it and understand it. We were certainly better at it in the times when we were studying it than I am now. I'd have to brush up to have the whole alphabet. I just know the words that I remember. But every once in a while, I'll hear them. I'll hear it like in the background in a movie or something. They'll play with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's always fun to hear that.
Sure. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And that speaks to the other part, right? So the older population has these things out of the past, but life is changing. I mean, consider the technology. I'm sitting here looking at, I don't know, 7 or 8 cameras in this room.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how to run all of them.
And that little thing that you are staring into,
Mr. Mevo, yeah,
is better than any of the other big
big
cameras
ones
that we have here.
Well, and technology is changing faster and faster and faster.
It is.
And I look at, so I use Blackboard. It's the learning platform for IRC, and it's the learning platform for Kaiser. It's for a number of schools. Other ones use Canva. They use, there's a number of other learning systems out there. One of the benefits that I have by being a student of different places is that I get to use different ones. And that, I think, keeps me more flexible. The Blackboard at IRC is different from the Blackboard at Kaiser. And how and what we do with it is different. And part of that just has to do with how it's configured. It's flexible enough to allow the different schools to configure it differently. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. There are things that I like about Canvas. There are many things I don't. There are things that I like about Blackboard. There are many things that I don't. Everyone has their pluses and minuses. And it's fun. I had to actually do an interesting assignment this week. I had to do a video. Normally you do a discussion, you write, and you type it up, and you submit it. We had to do a video, an APA video, and that was a little bit more interesting.
Okay, so what did you do?
Well, obviously I did a video and recorded myself. I'm lucky enough to have a piece of software called Camtasia, but I did the videoing of me actually on Zoom, and then I loaded it into Camtasia and edited it.
Wow.
So, and as I was doing it, I was thinking of the beautiful, wonderful thing that I know is so important, which is that when you have a tape, there are things you can edit. We do it to my commercials, and we do it to everybody else's commercials too, where you take out some of the long moments.
Sure. Oh, Carol's a master at that. She can.
And if I were really editing me on a radio show, I would get rid of the you-knows.
Oh, yes.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Because we all have those things. And what that did was that allowed me to shorten my video and get it inside the time limit. It had to be more than a certain amount, and as we know, I'm never at a loss for words. So keeping it down to the max was one of the key things.
So how long was did this thing turn out to be?
It had to be more than 3, and there were 2 videos. One had to be less than 4 and the other one less than 5. They both had to be more than 3. And they were both around 4. And the one that had to be less than 4 came in at 4 minutes and 3 or 4 seconds. So I went and it became 3 minutes and 50 seconds when I was done.
There you go.
I used 5 of those 50 seconds to stick the bibliography on a screen as my last panel. So
Nice.
it ends on that.
Nice.
Yeah.
The credits.
If you will. They are the credits.
Sure.
And they're important, and so they're there. They're also in the notes underneath the video so that people can see what I'm referring to.
Mm-hmm.
APA. It's a good system, and I wish that students learned it better. My students probably call me the APA czar in class because I'm always on it. And I do too much work with tutoring doctoral students on APA. There is no reason for somebody to reach that level and not know how to do APA. I consider that a failure of their undergrad program. They should know how to do APA. And if they're going to be exposed to the AMA or the MLAs in their career fields, then they need to know those formats too. They're not all that different. And it's just important. You look like a sloppy scholar when you don't do your documentation properly. It looks like you don't know what you're doing. And it's the same as if somebody doesn't speak English, English speakers will judge them as being mentally not as competent as they really are.
I get that. Yeah.
We judge by language. We judge by the appearance of the document, whether or not it's scattered, whether the grammar's right. It doesn't mean the idea is wrong, but it's harder for that idea to sell when it's not packaged in proper language. And that's one of the reasons for worrying about whether or not students learn to write, learn to speak properly. And that's why they made a requirement of the video. I might not have liked it, and it struck me as funny. It was humorous this week. I was so nervous about this little 3-minute video, and here I am making an hour-long one. But it's not APA, and you'll judge me, but I won't get a grade. I won't hear about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I will on this little 3-minute piece. And there's a piece in me that wanted it to look good. And it's not that I don't want this to look good. I guess it's because I've done this long enough and often enough that I am comfortable in front of all of these cameras and Mr. Mevo and this big mic in my face. But it was funny. It was really funny to make that video.
That's kind of cool, though. Yeah.
I may try Mr. Mevo next time to do the recording, though, because he does a better job.
It's all 4K.
It is, but I've got to... Yeah, I've got to figure out how to download his videos. I might be able to download them. I'll have to figure that out onto the iPad.
Oh, I would think that would be...
You would think that would be easy. Well, it's probably just one of the settings. I just haven't done it because it streams out and it goes on to...
Everything's live stream.
Everything is live stream. So it goes and it records over on Facebook and it stays there. And it's not so easy to download a video from...
That's interesting.
From Facebook. They lock it. It's not easy to... You can keep it within the system. You can save it to Facebook, but you can't export it elsewhere. You can with a YouTube one. You can download from YouTube. And I know that I can have Mevo go to my YouTube account. I can do that. So there's a number of different ways. I just have to spend a little bit of time before the day that the assignment's due.
So... Now that you're back as a student,
Yes.
how much time is this thing taking you?
Not that much. Partially because I do have the doctorate, so I'm not having to read and reread. I just need to know what material's being covered. And I'm pretty skilled at writing because I've done so much of it. I don't waste as much time as a new student might in finding the sources that I need. When the assignment says, I'm trying to become aware of when I say the assignment was to have 2 to 3 references, and it's a piece of cake for me to find 5. And I know how to set Google Scholar or the libraries. And I've got access to the IRSC library. I've got access to the Kaiser library. I've got access to Liberty's library. I've got, and NCU became national. I've got alumni status in that library. So I've got a number of libraries to find any article that I'm choosing to look at. And when you go and you can't find an article, you can get it through the various libraries. You just have to keep asking the journal who has the rights to get it. A lot of things today, though, are being published open, and anybody can get that. Google Scholar can find it. They do a beautiful job. That's Google Scholar. It's not Googling, it's Google Scholar. It looks different, it acts different, but it has a setting on the left side where you can say 2018 or newer, or 2022 or newer, or even 2023, if you really want to catch the cutting edge literature. And so I set it to 2022 unless I'm really looking for some scientists or psychologist or somebody's original work. Then I've got to look older. But if I'm not doing that, I can set it to very modern stuff. And so I know that professors are looking for that. It seems to be hard to teach students that it's really important to have, for example, today, if you're going to talk about the impact of COVID and virtual learning, you need to have something after 2020 because you can't talk about it before the event. You can talk about different things, but COVID was not a thing until after it happened. So there is a need to stay current and be modern. And that's just part of life. We need to move with the times. Not forget the past. Use it. Have the skills. They're important. Recognize what history teaches us, but use it effectively in today's world, which is changing faster and faster. So with that note, I invite everybody to sit back, enjoy, give yourself a breather. We need our breaks and our rest. It's how we stay productive. And we have services tonight at 7:30 at 540 Northwest University Boulevard, Suite 102, front building, right next to the elevators.
All right. You have a good week.
You as well. Everybody stay well, be well, drive safely.
Enjoy your video.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Ask a Rabbi right here on WPSL, Port St. Lucie. Talk to the Treasure Coast, webcaster to the world.